guys, it's Matt. Welcome to the video. I am a compulsive gambler in recovery and I'm your mind and movement mentor here to help you. So I'm going to cut to the chase on this one. Something that is really helping me with my gambling recovery. And it sounds obvious, but it's not. And it's taken me such a long time to internalize, which I'll explain more about in a second, is that the gambling addict in me just wants to play for the sake of playing. Gamble just for the sake of gambling. The addiction would have me believe that there is a point of arrival that I can get to where things are different. But 20 plus years of addiction and problem gambling behavior tells me that that is just not the case. I am diagnosed with ADHD. I don't know a tremendous amount about the brain, albeit I have been down a relatively deep rabbit hole. And the understanding there is that maybe I'm at more of a naturally low level of baseline dopamine than the average person. And therefore I'm more susceptible to vices, so to speak, that dump cheap forms of excessive dopamine. So all addictions really, anything calls into this brackets, sex, porn, drugs, alcohol, compulsive shopping, you name it. So that for me has been like a bit of an epiphany. And I think I actually understood this at a very young age, but I just didn't do anything with it. It's the roulette wheel spinning with the anticipation of what number it's going to land on that I love. It's the ball moving closer to the goal in a football match, or the features lighting up on a fruit machine that get me. That is essentially the state that I am addicted to. And it is a pull towards that state because of its stimulus and because of its brain activation. But simultaneously, like most things in addiction, there is also a push away from something. So when I'm in that state, I'm not thinking about things I don't want to think about. I'm not in parts of my head that I don't want to be in, or thoughts I'm trying to escape from. There's an escapism aspect to it as well. It's protecting me from certain things, I suppose I should say. Things I don't want to face, things I don't want to look at, things that are troubling me, however you want to verbalize it. And like I say, I think I had a conscious understanding of this. And I can see the scenario now. And the story is that I was about 17 and was with some mates, some of them a little bit older than me, but we weren't old enough to drive. So we would go down to motorway service stations to play fruit machines in the evening. We weren't old enough to get into betting shops or pubs. And we drive down the M3 to get there, and there'd be these fruit machines where no one would essentially police, so you could go in and play them, only a couple of them. Fruit machines with £25 jackpots. And I remember one time I put in £2 into this machine and I got the £25 jackpot. And very unusually, because this very, very rarely happened, the jackpot always came with like a repeat chance, which I thought was a complete fallacy. But on this occasion, I actually get the repeat. So I get £50 for my £2 stake. So about as good as it could possibly be, common sense would tell you, on a fruit machine. £2 has gone in, £50 has come out. Wow, off we go. But no, I remember just like my mate being like, wow, oh my God, and there was all these coins coming out the bottom of the machine. And I just start putting more money in. And this is one of the machines that I loved to play. I loved the feature on it. I loved collecting the numbers to get to a certain point. When you had an X amount of numbers, you would then be on a different board where the magic would start to happen. And he looked at me like, what on earth are you doing? Why are you still playing this thing? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It might be. I'm just almost like deflecting, distracting, just keep pumping my pound coins back in. And he put his hand over the coin slot and was like, Matt, what are you doing? You know this is not going to pay out anymore. You essentially just emptied it. It's 78% payout percentage, which means every £1,000 that goes in, it pays out 780. It's essentially a money box. You know that you are going to have to put 30, 40 pounds probably plus back into this thing to get £5, £10 back if you're lucky. And I remember him sort of almost like manually trying to shuffle me away from the machine. And I just sort of snapped in an act of defiance and just said back to him, I can't think of anything else I'd rather spend my money on. And when I said it, I kind of probably only 75, 80% meant it. But to an extent, I really meant it in that moment. That just like, I was just loving the play just to play. And even though the outcome in this instance was almost certainly inevitably negative, I just wanted to stay in that state, however ludicrous it was. And when I think back to that moment now, that was a real sort of red flag. And I was almost too young and too immature to kind of see how that was going to pan out in later adult life. And obviously I started betting more on automated roulette machines when I was old enough to go into betting shops, casinos, sports betting of matches that I was at and wasn't even watching in the end of it. And yeah, that is something that you can easily forget as a gambling addict, as a compulsive gambler, because the lure is in the addicted mind telling you the narrative, creating the narrative of there's shiny objects here with this money that we win. You can pay off this bill and reduce that level of stress. You can buy that thing that you want that's going to make you happier. Whenever I've lost, I've always chased. I've never really bought anything that I've apparently wanted, that the addiction has seduced me back into action to apparently get. It's just staying on the Ferris wheel that is the appeal. And it's almost like it's quite hard to admit in some ways because it's so illogical. And even as I'm saying it now, it's like, that duped me for nearly a quarter of a century. That thinking, like I couldn't get the upper hand on that level of thinking, like how preposterous is that? What on earth? It's hard to admit that you are kind of powerless to that state, and then the ego gets involved, and the ego says, we like to overemphasize as humans generally how intelligent and how disciplined we are. So it's not nice to necessarily think, certainly not to say it out loud or admit to others that you are powerless to something, because that almost makes you, to an extent, feel a bit more inferior, or that you're almost like coming at it from a place of deficiency. So then I know for myself, even when I knew that I had a very problematic relationship with gambling, it would lead me to kind of being like, no, that is surely not the case. Surely I'm not completely powerless. I'm more intelligent than that. I'm more disciplined. I've got other parts of my life together that aren't falling apart. So surely I can and I'd go back to retesting myself time and time again, which I think is what a lot of compulsive gamblers do. And for me, always the same result, always ended in tears. And it's kind of funny to think about now. End of next week will be 1 year fully in recovery. Although in years prior, my gambling has definitely diminished at greater intervals. My recovery has been greater intervals until I fully made the decision that absolute cold turkey is necessary, and that will be the 1 year anniversary coming up next week. But it really cost me. It cost me a long time. It cost me a lot of time, effort, energy, resources, relationships, whatever else you want to say, in not picking that apart. And I think when you are in the fog and the chaos of gambling, even the message like this, bringing it to your attention, you can kind of screen it out and just think, no, I was so blinkered for so long that even the most kind of formidable recovering gambling advice probably wouldn't have penetrated into me. But this is a big one. I think this is a really big one. Like I say, that just playing just to play to get the dopamine, whether that's building up a deficiency if you're neurodivergent like I am, or just because you've slightly distorted your brain chemistry through repeated gambling, vices. It could even be things like excessive social media and that these days that train your brain into that really kind of boop, 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 dopamine type seeking behavior, which is a real problem in the modern day with a lot of the technology. And that's why gambling, I believe, one of the reasons, as well as the normalization of it, which I've spoken about in other videos, is at such an alarming negative trajectory, which is why I make these videos. So yeah, it is for that reason to try to. I like to think of this channel as the gambling advice that I would have listened to, that I would have needed back when I was in my deepest, darkest days in the chaos of addiction. So I hope that makes, to an extent, some level of sense. If you're not addicted, this might shine a little bit of light on someone whose behaviour who you know is, who may be close to you. I'm grateful for all the feedback I get on these videos. I respond to all the comments. Thanks so much for everyone that watches. If you can subscribe, if you like the content, it does help me reach more people about a topic that I'm just incredibly passionate about. I've got some interview series coming out soon where I'm going to be interviewing other people who are problem gamblers and a few surprise special guests as well. So keep your eye out for that. And once again, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video very, very soon.